I'm Carole Owens, and this is Stockbridge Updates. You know, I've been thinking, what if we're not actually that different? What if human beings are more alike than different, and this great national divide is a theory that's been forced upon us, not discovered by us? When you stop to think about it, we all want the same things: privacy and the inviolability of our homes. We want safety on our streets, and we want peace abroad. We're not asking for a handout. We're asking for things to be fair and just a little bit easier. They say that we don't care about things like gerrymandering and voter suppression, and all that's getting into the weeds. There are no weeds here, folks. We all want our vote to count, and we all want fairness. You know, at the end of the day, that division is the friend of the enemies of democracy, and our unity, if we can find it, is the friend of a continued democracy, because those that want more power in their own hands than what they earned or deserved have to make us believe that their power is inevitable, that there's nothing we can do, and that anyway, we don't agree on anything. They say that it was walking from the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia to City Tavern that the delegates were walking that 3 blocks, and that is when someone stopped Benjamin Franklin and said, Mr. Franklin, what kind of government do we have? And he said, a republic if you can hold it. If. That was the word for the ages, 2-letter word for our existence. One thing you find at a No Kings rally is community and a smile. The if becomes a we will win if you find unity. And now, I have a great pleasure to introduce a lawyer and a columnist in our community. He said, we'll find out if I'm interesting. Let's find out. Peter Most, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And I bet you are interesting. You know, I read your column, and I notice that you've been focusing on budgets.
Yes.
Okay, so you focused on the school district, the Berkshire Hills school districts, like Stockbridge, West Stockbridge, and Great Barrington, and its budget. Right. And then on the town of Great Barrington budget. I want to ask about the town of Great Barrington budget first, because it sounded to me, and you can correct me, as if you were talking about the way that how we spend our money demonstrates our values.
That's right. I've been focused on just that point. There is a portion of Great Barrington that, no matter what, does not want any tax increases at all. I'm not going to say that I have sympathy for that position, in that there's lots of economic stresses. However, tax policy is social policy. Mm-hmm. We have to consider as a town, do we listen to the loudest anti-tax voice in the room, or do we consider the greater good? And do we all chip in so that we can make sure that we have the services that the town needs, that everyone is being properly housed, properly fed, that properly schooled? All those are tax-driven decisions. And I've been concerned that the anti-tax voices in Great Barrington are louder than the voices that are saying, hey, let's think about us as a community and let's consider that we need additional tax dollars to provide the services that we all need.
And Great Barrington isn't alone in that. Other towns throughout Berkshire County feel that way. And as a state, we have Prop 2.5, which means, folks, that a municipality cannot raise their taxes more than 2.5% without permission from the voters. And isn't it the case that Great Barrington is asking the voters to override 2.5 this year?
Well, the new town manager's first budget sought a $5 million override, Prop 2.5 override.
And what percent would that be?
Well, the overall budget is 17 million. The operating portion of the budget is $17 million.
So that's a little less than a third more.
Right. There are. It was sort of a rip the Band-Aid off proposal. The town has historically not invested in capital infrastructure, things of that nature, and they've been kicking the can on a number of projects. And the town manager said, let's stop using free cash. Let's address the budget issues that we have. We're going to have to do an override. But the select board, the chair of the select board, Steve Bannon, called that budget, where a $5 million override, he said that was dead on arrival. That would have meant about a $1,200 a month increase for the average homeowner in Great Barrington.
Oh my gosh, they would feel that.
Right. So the budget, so after a series of meetings, and again, those loud anti-tax voices being heard, the town is now focusing on no tax override, slashing the budget, and maybe having somewhere between a $300 to $600 increase. And in my column, or columns, what I've suggested is that's a disservice to the town. We're not going to end up having the town that we want if we are slashing services. Do you want your streets plowed? Do you want your police officers to be well paid? There's a number, dollars matter, and how you invest those dollars matter. And I don't think you can arbitrarily say, we're going to have a ceiling of $300, let's figure it out.
I hear you. And one of the things that you and I have in common is we're opinion writers. And I wonder, for you, how you approach writing about opinion. Where do you think the guardrails are? Where do you think can you... There is the First Amendment. You get to say anything.
So I don't worry about coming up with an opinion that I know will displease people. So I'm not. I also don't yell fire in the theater. So I understand.
So there's the guardrail.
There's the guardrail.
Okay.
I have been told often that I'm widely disliked after some opinion has come out, and I'm okay with that. By the way, my goal is not to be disliked either. I like to look at the facts as I see them and try to build my case, hopefully that the reader is at the end of that column going to see the world the way I do. And I even put a survey at the bottom of the column, essentially, it's perhaps a bit of a test. At the end of the column, I'm asking the question that has been addressed. The survey is asking the question that's been addressed in the column, and I often find out whether people agree or disagree.
It's very interesting, because what I hear you saying is that you write to convince.
Yes. That's interesting. It's advocacy.
That's very That's very interesting. What percentage of opinion writers do you think write to convince?
I think most opinion writers are, so that I draw a distinction between an opinion writer and a reporter, right?
Well, of course.
And I believe most opinion writers are hoping that when you have finished that column, you will see the world somewhat the way they do.
Okay, I can only tell you that this opinion writer, never even thought of that, and now that you've articulated it, wouldn't want it. Okay, okay, moving, but
then, no, I think we need to check our vocabulary here. One can be a columnist, not seeking to change opinions, and then you can have opinion authors, which I consider myself, in which you're presenting the opinion and its advocacy.
I understand that, but that doesn't that does not tell you anything about the goal of the opinion writer in writing it. For example, I'm told I am an opinion writer. I'm told by some that I have too many opinions. I'm told by others that I clarified the subject beautifully, whatever. I write what I write to inform, period. I never thought about the reader changing their mind. Just never occurred to me. So that's very, very interesting. Now, back to budgets.
Yes.
Because you do have some very clear opinions on that and very interesting, and I find them enlightening. It's the way I approach your columns. What have you taught me or what have I learned?
Right.
But the other budget that you talk about is the school district, the Berkshire Hills School District, and that's Stockbridge, West Stockbridge, and Great Barrington, and we're bound together contractually to provide education and pay for it, to provide the school buildings and pay for them. Now, you had a very interesting suggestion. Tell me about that. And how was it received?
I think you're asking me about, I would like to see the Berkshire Hills School District, which is a regional school district. Right. I would like to see regional school districts throughout the state change the way regional school districts are assessed. That is, the property owners are assessed within the district.
Okay, wait, though. Explain to them how it is now.
Okay. In 1949, think New England, much of New England determined that they would assess rural regional school districts based on head count. And at the time, in 1949, now we're talking exclusively about the Commonwealth, most communities were agrarian and there were farmers, and it was just assumed that the property values within neighboring towns were essentially going to be about the same, and that it made sense, sort of like a toll, to each town would be counted. How many students did you send to the regional school district? And then your assessment would be based on head count. And that is common in New England. It is not common in most of the United States. There is a distinction, however, recently, it's grown to be much more so, that certain communities have far more students going from a town to a school, but their property valuations are far less. Throughout the United States, most assessments for schools to property owners are based on the property valuation in the community. So there might be a county with a school district taxing authority that looks at all the properties in the county, and then your homeowner assessment is based on your portion of the overall valuation. So if you have if your house is worth $1 and the entire county's property is worth $100, you'd be paying 1%. It's just math. Did I lose you with that?
Yes. So let me go back. My real estate tax is a function of the value or the assessment of my property.
Correct.
Does this work the same way? And if it works differently, then you have to explain it again.
So you're, for the town of Stockbridge, your property taxes are based on the assessment of your particular home,
right,
as compared to the entirety of all of the homes in Stockbridge, right? We understand that.
It's just a percentage.
As a percentage.
Right. It's just a percentage of the value of my house.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
It's now, for counties throughout the United States, or any taxing district, it's done the same way. As Stockbridge assesses your home, the assessments for school districts are done the same way, based on equalized property valuations.
So it is the same.
It's the same throughout the United States.
Okay, I got
except for New England.
Right.
No, but now I'm switching topics. We're going from, that's property valuation. So I'm going to use the term EQV, equalized property valuations. So EQV is what you use to assess a homeowner's real estate taxes, right? EQV is what most of the United States uses when assessing school district assessments.
Yay, I'm so glad I understand this.
In a few states in New England, and including Massachusetts, EQV is not used for school assessment.
Here. Correct.
Head count is used here. And right. Now getting back to my column, and I think we took an unfortunate detour.
No.
I hope it's okay. But I'm trying to get to.
It's good because that's what your column was about. Right. We need to change.
Right. So my column is suggesting we need to change, moving away from a mere head count analysis to an EQV analysis. And now you're going to ask, why does it matter to me? And it matters to me because the entire community is sending students to school. The entire community wants to educate. It may be no one community should be disadvantaged by having more children in that town and having to pay more than another community that is paying less. We should all be paying an equalized amount to send children and educate children. In the vein of it takes a village to raise a child, we should all care about public education, and we should disperse the cost of that amongst all of the property in the district.
As we do with many, many, many other services.
Precisely.
Right. Okay. So the follow-up question I'd actually asked you is I was curious what kind of response you got to that. And I know you have that poll thing, but outside of the numbers, did people write to you, or were there verbal responses, or?
Well, yeah, so yes. And not unsurprisingly, the responses I got were very much driven by where you lived and whose ox is being gored, if you will.
So Stockbridge, which with the highest real estate values.
So Stockbridge, there's the delta, the difference between Great Barrington. If you were to implement the plan I'm discussing, there would be a transfer of wealth of $6.5 million from Stockbridge to Great Barrington over time. At the moment, Stockbridge is paying $6.5 million less based on an equalized property valuation to support Berkshire Hills Regional School District.
Because they have so fewer students.
They have few students and high property values.
Right.
And so the folks in Great Barrington who read my column of course, thought this is terrific. I should point out, though, this is not like an original idea of mine. This is something that's been going around for years, and there's a Great Barrington resident, Chip Elitzer, who has been speaking about this for over a decade. And so, he, of course, was quite pleased, but everyone in Great Barrington is pleased to hear that there are people that are trying to pick up this baton and see this implemented.
You were worried you weren't interesting. This has gone so fast that we only have 5 minutes left, and I would be so interested to hear you talk a little bit about Simon's Rock. It's 251 acres in Great Barrington, and a number of buildings that for a very long time had a function. And now that's going to change. What do you think the impact will be? Tell me about Simon's Rock.
So Simon's Rock is of course in Great Barrington, but it is an engine for South County. 251 acres, 47 buildings, since it was announced in November 2024 that it was going to close in June of 2025. I formed a group along with others that wanted to make sure that Simon's Rock continues and it is used on an ongoing basis, not only for Great Barrington, but for all of South County. At the moment, it's essentially mothballed, except for the athletic center and the Daniel Arts Center, and even the Daniel Arts Center is about to be fully mothballed. So
no more plays there. Isn't that where I went to play?
Yeah. So the Great Barrington Public Theater is now going to have its shows this coming summer at St. James Place instead. It is an opportunity. To answer your question, we see Simon's Rock as an opportunity to drive development in South County. We have formed a group that has made a bid for the property. It's a community-based group. The community bid would like to see workforce housing, or the better term for that might be middle market housing. And we would like to see a continuing care retirement community, which is referred to as a CCRC. Think of it as a senior living community, but the industry term is CCRC. And we would like to see the housing is important because Great Barrington and South County lack sufficient housing. You've probably read that Fairview often has 35 to 50 openings because there's inadequate housing in the area. The South County Ambulance Squad, none of the paramedics and EMTs that work for the squad live in Great Barrington. Most of them travel 45 minutes and some more than an hour to work for the ambulance squad. We need housing in South County. Great Barrington is 251 acres. I think we can do this. We can figure this out. It's going to require a little bit of assistance from the state. We've been working with Lee Davis on that. It can be done. All we need, though, is for BARD to actually sell it, and it is still looking for better bids than the one we presented.
And BARD has a figure in mind.
Well, I can tell you as of February, whatever figure BARD has in mind must be at least $1 greater than what we offered. Simon's Rock, in truth, is a difficult property. It has 5 dams, some of which are in disrepair. It has no subdivision road. You need a subdivision road to develop a property. A subdivision road for Simon's Rock would cost somewhere between $7 and $9 million. Many of the buildings were value engineered when they were originally built, which is a kind way of saying many of them aren't even worth keeping. We met with somebody who was advising us, who told us that Simon's Rock's problem is that it is under demolished. So there are problems at Simon's Rock. The bid that we made takes into consideration that really we're going to be a caretaker. We want to use this property, but the carrying costs are very significant.
So you've given a lot of thought to how Simon's Rock could be repurposed for the benefit of Great Barrington and South County.
Yes.
Let me ask you, what's the worst case scenario? In your mind, what's the worst thing that could happen there?
I think the worst case scenario would be, I'm not going to pick any particular religious group, but if it was taken over by a religious group, it would come off the tax rolls. They might put a wall around it and make it insular. We think Simon's Rock should always be open to the public, and the athletic center should always be open to the public. The Daniel Arts Center should be available to the public. We think this is a public space, but the worst thing that could happen is if somebody puts up a wall and doesn't let the public in.
Well, with the Dover Amendment, it wouldn't just be religious; it would be religious or educational.
Well, it could be educational, but educational groups at least might have some facility.
Case in point, Simon's Rock did.
Precisely.
Right.
Which was, Simon's Rock gave to the community almost as much as the community gave to Simon's Rock. There was a back and forth. So you're asking what the worst thing. The worst thing, I'm thinking of certain towns in New York State where walls have been put up, and it really doesn't permit the community to be involved.
Right. And it would be on the tax rolls if there were a number of houses and so forth.
Right. That's one of the things. Now, our plan...
And you would want that to remain.
Yes. So currently it's not on the tax rolls.
Of course not.
Right, of course. Our plan would be actually to have the athletic center and the Daniel Arts Center to be leased to nonprofits. So those portions wouldn't be on the tax rolls, but the rest of the property would be on the tax rolls. So that would help certainly offer some dollars to Great Barrington, and I think we know it needs as many as it can get.
You know, it's interesting. In my field, psychology, if you have a patient or a client, one of the ways you approach and solve a problem is to do what's called partializing. And as I listen to you, that is how you approached Simon's Rock. It is not, you're not approaching it as a single unit, but as divisible. And how do you partialize the problem and treat different elements differently? Well, I wish you great good luck with that. And I am confident that everybody found you interesting.
Thank you, Carole.
Thank you so much.